Alaska has a moderately regulated late fee framework, shaped by the state's Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act and the unique economic conditions of America's largest and most remote state. The governing law is found in the Alaska Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, Alaska Statutes Title 34, Chapter 03, along with general contract principles. If you're a landlord or tenant in Alaska, the URLTA provides meaningful structure, and Alaska's extreme geography, climate, and cost of living create practical considerations that don't exist anywhere else. Let's start with the basics. Alaska does not impose a specific statutory dollar cap or percentage cap on late fees. There is no provision in Chapter 34.03 that limits the fee to a defined amount or percentage. The fee is governed by the lease terms and general contract principles, specifically the requirement that the fee be reasonable. Alaska does not mandate a specific grace period by statute. There is no state law requiring a defined number of days before a late fee can be charged. However, standard practice among Alaska landlords is to include a grace period of 3 to 5 days. And most professional property managers provide at least 5 days given Alaska's unique mail delivery and banking logistics. The key legal principle is reasonableness, and Alaska's URLTA provides context. Under Alaska Statutes Section 34.03.060, the rental agreement may not contain provisions that are unconscionable. A late fee that is grossly disproportionate to the landlord's actual damages from late payment can be challenged as unconscionable under the Act. This gives courts authority to evaluate and strike down excessive fees, even if the tenant agreed to them in the lease. The dual standard, reasonableness under contract law and unconscionability under the URLTA, means Alaska courts have meaningful tools to police late fee abuses. A fee must satisfy both tests to be enforceable. What's reasonable in Alaska? The state has one of the most expensive cost of living environments in the country, and rents reflect this. Rents in Anchorage typically range from $1,300 to $2,100. Fairbanks and Juneau are similarly expensive. A flat fee of $50 to $75 or a percentage-based fee of 5 to 8% of the monthly rent is generally defensible. Given Alaska's high rents, even a modest percentage produces meaningful dollar amounts. The lease must clearly state the late fee terms. Under the URLTA, the rental agreement governs the relationship, and any fee must be documented. The lease should specify the rent due date, any grace period, the exact fee amount or formula, when the fee triggers, whether additional charges apply for continued non-payment, and whether the fee is defined as additional rent. Alaska's Unfair Trade Practices and Consumer Protection Act, found in Alaska Statutes Title 45, Chapter 50, provides an additional enforcement mechanism. The Act prohibits unfair or deceptive business practices, and excessive or improperly disclosed late fees can constitute an unfair practice. The Act provides for actual damages and potentially treble damages, creating meaningful risk for landlords who systematically overcharge. Compounding late fees in Alaska must satisfy both the reasonableness and unconscionability standards. A single one-time fee after the grace period is the safest approach. Daily or weekly compounding that could accumulate to a disproportionate amount faces challenge under both frameworks. Most Alaska landlords use a single flat fee. The interaction between late fees and the eviction process in Alaska is governed by the URLTA. Under Alaska Statutes Section 34.03.220, the landlord must provide a 7-day notice for non-payment of rent. If the tenant fails to pay within 7 days, the landlord can file for eviction. Whether unpaid late fees can be included in the 7-day notice depends on how the lease defines them. If defined as additional rent, they can be included. If treated as a separate charge, the landlord may need to pursue them independently. Best practice: define late fees as additional rent. The 7-day cure period gives the tenant a meaningful opportunity to pay. The cure amount must include only compliant late fees. An inflated demand that includes excessive fees gives the tenant grounds to challenge, and Alaska courts will evaluate the fee under the unconscionability standard. Alaska's anti-retaliation provision under Section 34.03.310 creates a 6-month rebuttable presumption of retaliation if the landlord takes adverse action after a tenant exercises legal rights. This is relevant to late fees. If a tenant reports a habitability issue and the landlord begins aggressively enforcing late fees shortly afterward, the tenant can argue retaliation. The consequences of retaliatory action in Alaska include liability for actual damages and up to 1.5 months' rent, whichever is greater, plus attorney's fees. Alaska limits the security deposit to 2 months' rent. The deposit must be returned within 14 days if no deductions are claimed, or within 30 days if deductions apply. The landlord must provide an itemized statement. Unpaid compliant late fees can be deducted, but the deduction must be itemized and the fees must satisfy the reasonableness and unconscionability standards. Failure to return the deposit within the required period can result in the landlord being liable for up to twice the amount wrongfully withheld, plus attorney's fees. For tenants receiving Housing Choice Voucher Assistance, administered in Alaska through the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation or local housing authorities, landlords should not charge late fees when the authority's portion is delayed due to processing. The tenant cannot control the authority's payment timeline. Alaska's massive military population fundamentally shapes the rental market, particularly in Anchorage and Fairbanks. Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage is one of the largest military installations in the Pacific. Fort Wainwright and Eielson Air Force Base near Fairbanks generate significant demand in interior Alaska. Military BAH rates for Alaska are among the highest in the nation, reflecting the extreme cost of living. Many Alaska landlords price their units to align with BAH rates. Military pay is predictable, the 1st and 15th, and most military tenants pay reliably. PCS transitions in Alaska have unique complications. Moving to or from Alaska involves longer logistics than a continental transfer. Household goods shipments can take weeks, temporary lodging may be needed, and the financial disruption of the move can create temporary cash flow challenges. Some Alaska landlords provide extra flexibility during the first month of a PCS arrival, understanding that the payment system normalizes quickly. The deployment cycle at Fort Wainwright and J-Bear affects military family finances. When units deploy, family financial management may be temporarily disrupted, particularly if the deploying service member managed household bills. Some Alaska landlords proactively contact military families at deployment to confirm payment arrangements are in place. Alaska's extreme climate creates unique considerations that interact with late fee decisions. Heating costs in Alaska, particularly in Fairbanks and interior Alaska where winter temperatures reach 50 below zero, are substantial. If the landlord includes heating in the rent, the cost of providing heat during winter is enormous, and the time value of that money is correspondingly higher when rent is late. If tenants pay their own heating, a late fee on top of already extreme winter utility costs can push the total housing burden to unsustainable levels. Some Alaska landlords adjust their late fee enforcement approach seasonally, being more flexible during the depths of winter when tenants are already under financial pressure from heating costs, and being firmer during summer when utility costs are lower and the economy is stronger. While there's no legal requirement for seasonal adjustment, the practical psychology of tenant relations in Alaska's extreme environment matters. Alaska's geographic isolation creates banking and mail delivery challenges that affect payment timing. Many rural Alaska communities are not on the road system, accessible only by air. Mail delivery to these communities can be irregular. Electronic payment systems have reduced this issue for urban Alaska. but tenants in remote communities may face genuine logistical barriers to on-time payment that don't exist in the lower 48. For landlords with properties in remote Alaska communities, which is uncommon but not unheard of, the grace period should account for the realities of mail and banking access. A 3-day grace period that works in Anchorage may be genuinely insufficient in a village accessible only by bush plane. From a practical standpoint, Alaska's rental market is concentrated in a few communities. Anchorage is by far the largest market, home to roughly 40% of the state's population. The economy is driven by oil and gas headquarters, military, J-Bear, healthcare, state and federal government, transportation, and tourism. Rents are high by national standards, typically $1,300 to $2,100. Most Anchorage landlords charge flat fees of $50 to $75 with a 5-day grace period. Anchorage's economy has faced challenges related to Alaska's dependence on oil revenue and state budget pressures. These economic headwinds have moderated rent growth compared to some lower 48 markets. Late payment patterns may increase during periods of state budget cuts or oil price declines. Fairbanks has a market dominated by the military, Fort Wainwright and Eielson AFB, and the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Rents are high, reflecting the extreme cost of living in interior Alaska. Military BAH drives pricing. Heating costs during Fairbanks's extreme winters are a major factor in the total housing cost equation. Juneau, the state capital, has one of the tightest rental markets in the state. Geographic constraints, no road access, severely limit housing supply. State government employment is the primary economic driver. Rents are high relative to the small population. Vacancies are extremely low. Sitka, Ketchikan, Kodiak, and other smaller communities have very limited rental markets. Palmer, Wasilla, and the Mat-Su Valley, north of Anchorage, have growing markets with somewhat more affordable rents than Anchorage proper. One best practice for Alaska landlords: set your late fee at a level that reflects Alaska's high cost of living while remaining defensible. A fee of 5 to 8% of the monthly rent produces meaningful dollar amounts on Alaska's high rents. Document your actual costs, which are legitimately higher in Alaska than in most states due to higher labor costs, higher overhead, and the time value of money in a high-cost environment. Another best practice: include a grace period of at least 5 days. Alaska's banking logistics, mail delivery challenges, and the general complexity of life in the state make a 5-day grace period particularly important. Some Alaska landlords provide 7 days, which accounts for the additional logistical challenges without being overly generous. A third best practice: understand the military BAH cycle and align your operations with it. If a significant portion of your tenants are military, their payment timing is driven by the military pay schedule. Setting your due date on the 1st, which aligns with the first military payday, reduces late payments. Most Alaska landlords who serve the military market use this approach. For the complete guide to Alaska late fee laws, visit tenantscreeningbackgroundcheck.com. Subscribe to our channel for every state in our late fee law series.